Hey there, and welcome in to the first Utes game day of the fall of 2025 in a familiar venue for the University of Utah. They are in Pasadena at the Rose Bowl for the site of the first matchup of the year. It is Utah and familiar foe, former Pac-12 foe, UCLA. I am Porter Larsen. This is Utes Game Day on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. Head coach Kyle Whittingham, his 20th season as the head coach of the University of Utah. He's been there for about 30 years. Deshaun Foster, his second season at UCLA. They were 5-7 last year, and that is his career record at UCLA. Kyle Whittingham, his 380th career game here at the University of Utah. And the California kid doing it against the team from Los Angeles. That's what I want to start with here in this first segment, a little series history, a little time capsule for Utah and UCLA, but still to come in the Utes Game Day pregame show. You're going to get let's call it a roster and injury report. In week one, it's going to be more of an update on what that means in 2025 because that has changed. In the world of college football, we will now have some sort of availability reports, at least going into conference play. So we'll explain that. We'll give you some updates, although Utah's relatively healthy going into week one. A little preview of that segment there for you. Trevor Riley will stop by the program, the former Ute, former NFL linebacker, of course, a Super Bowl champion, one Trevor Riley. Zach Moss will stop by the program today. Of course, a current NFL free agent rehabbing from injury after a solid few years in Buffalo and Indianapolis, of course, in Cincinnati most recently. And then Kenneth Scott will join the program. Batman Gooby will be on the show live from Houston. He's going to join the show throughout the year, and I think he's going to be here for a few of them as well. I do know he'll be here for the rivalry game, and we'll be co-hosting that show. So a little preview of the pregame show and the guests that will join me. That'll be a rotating cast of characters throughout the year, including consistent chats with Zach Moss and Trevor Riley. I know both planning to join us throughout the year. A big thank you in this first segment to our title sponsor of the Utes Game Day pregame show in the first hour of the show, brought to you by Outlaw Distillery. Outlaw Distillery, the official spirits provider of ESPN 700 and the ESPN 700 VIP tailgate at each home game this season. Amazing drinks like their honey bourbon, vodka, spiced rum, and even the coffee rum. So maybe those earlier kickoffs, you won't need it tonight. You won't necessarily, maybe you need it to stay up. The 9 p.m. kickoff here, Mountain Time. That coffee rum is really good stuff. Get a taste either at our VIP tailgate or you can stop by Outlaw Distillery. Go check out every one of their options at Big Willie's Sports Bar as well. Big Willie's, another fantastic partner of ESPN 700. Outlaw Distillery, grain to glass product forged in the history of the American West. Mark your calendars because this month they'll be dropping a near hazmat barrel-proof bourbon. Excited for everyone to try it. Check out our friends at Outlaw Distillery and outlawdistillery.com. Also found at all of your local liquor stores. All right, some serious history. We got some, dare I say, Pac-12 After Dark tonight. You may be not hoping for the weirdness that comes with the Pac-12 After Dark, but of course, Utah and UCLA, a couple of teams that know each other fairly well. The all-time series between these two teams is 12-9 in favor of UCLA. But here's your stat of the day. UCLA all-time 12-9 against the University of Utah. All nine of those wins for the Utes come under Kyle Whittingham. So Utah has 9 wins in their history against UCLA, all 9 of them coming under the direction of one Kyle Whittingham. He's 9-5 against UCLA, 8-4 in the Pac-12 era, including a 5-year span where Utah won those games by about 27 points per game. It's safe to say the California kid Kyle Whittingham has had the number of the UCLA Bruins, but this is a different squad. This is a different team entirely. Deshaun Foster in his second year, 8 new coaches on staff in Hollywood, 37 plus new players from the transfer side, and a bunch of new faces as incoming freshmen as well. So this is a very, very different UCLA team than the ones that we're used to, but we'll scout them top to bottom and give you at least a little idea of what you will see. It was tough to really decipher a lot about UCLA this offseason because of all of the new faces at quarterback, at running back. The only real continuity that UCLA has is along the defensive line. They're returning a bunch of starters there, including a few guys who missed a bunch of time last year with injuries. We'll get into the specifics of that group because I do think it's kind of strength on strength tonight. It's Utah's offensive line, which, again, this is all just on paper, is expected to be one of the best units in the country. All 5 guys with returning production, several of them with NFL scouts already calling and asking questions about them. I can tell you that for sure. So it's strength on strength. It's UCLA's defensive line, which is really the only group that is proven on that team. They were top 10 in the country last year in stopping the run. And that's actually really impressive when you realize they were 5-7. They weren't winning a bunch of football games and forcing teams to throw the ball a lot. A lot of times you see teams that, they're top in the country in stopping the run. A lot of times they're also like top 10 to 15 teams because they're forcing teams to throw it so much. They're winning football games. When you're leading, the other team is going to throw the ball. They're going to try to stop the clock. For UCLA, they were among the top teams in stopping the run in 2024, and they did it with an offense that really didn't stay on the field all that much. And they did it with a couple of guys that are returning. Now, they did lose 2 defensive tackles to the NFL draft. They lost a couple linebackers to the NFL draft. So let's be clear, there is still turnover in UCLA's defense in their front 7. It's just really the only place that they do have some continuity. Tight end room, I guess they have a 7th-year tight end who I think is a really, really good football player. If he can stay healthy, he may be a NFL prospect. Kind of a interesting situation there, almost a Brant Keithy type situation where he's probably a good enough pass catcher. He's probably a good enough tight end to be in the league, but he's now spent so long in college football that he's kind of hurt his draft stock. I think he's got a couple degrees to show for it, though, so that'll help. Again, UCLA leading the all-time series 12-9, and Kyle Whittingham, all 9 of those wins on the Utah side, 8-4 in the Pac-12 era. I really think this is a matchup that it's big for both of these teams, but it's big for the conferences as well. The Big Ten doesn't necessarily need UCLA to go out and put on a big performance. The Big Ten's they're going to get their CFP entries. They're going to have a couple of teams in the top 4 or 5 in the country. We know this is going to be the case with the Big Ten. But for the Big 12, well, they haven't started out too well. Outside of Iowa State, the Big 12 is kind of sputtered early on in week 1, week 0, whatever you want to call this, his first couple weeks of football. The Big 12 hasn't got off to a great start. And for the Big 12, perception's huge. Perception is really big going into this season when you look at the future and the future landscape of college football. You are auditioning for whatever the next version of college football looks like, both on a conference level and on an individual team level. We saw reports from Brett McMurphy in ESPN that the Big Ten is maybe not pausing their expansion talks. There was an athletic director out of Maryland who said that those things are very much still ongoing. And that's something that if you're one of the top teams in the Big 12, if you're one of the top teams in the ACC or the new look Pac-12, you have to be looking at that, and you are looking at that. I can promise you the athletic directors at those schools, they are all keeping tabs on what's going on with the Big Ten, with the SEC, with TV deals, because this shifting landscape of college football it's going to continue to move. I think that there's a place in front of us where there's a somewhat of a gentle landing spot, but it's not going to get there until the TV powers, the gambling powers, and the university-affiliated business powers kind of get what they want. And what they want is a TV product that kind of looks like the NFL. Because we've seen that business model. Well, we've seen it work better than any real sports business model in modern history. So they're going to continue to move towards that. I don't think there's really anything that's going to stop it. We'll talk to Trevor Riley about that. We'll talk to Zach Moss a little bit about that. Those are guys who've spent time in the NFL, so they can tell us a little bit about it. But it'll be part of the conversation as we go along throughout the year and throughout this pregame show. Again, as we go along, a little injury report. It's going to be more about what that's going to look like this year in the Big 12 and the Big 12 and the Power 5 availability reports. We'll tell you what to expect in 2025. Trevor Riley joins the show. We'll give you a college football and Big 12 scoreboard update. We'll also give you a little look at some of the opponents that Utah has on the slate that we've seen on the field already. That includes Wyoming. That includes a couple of Big 12 foes. And we'll go from there. We'll give you our predictions for the show as well. You can join us live, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, and, of course, live on YouTube if you want to see me sitting here in the studio watching football on this beautiful fall day. Where are you listening from? And what is your game day tradition? Give us a text. It's 877-353-0700. That is the text line for ESPN 700. It's 877-353-0700. Where are you listening from? What's your game day tradition? Are you in L.A.? Are you here in Salt Lake? Maybe you brought the smoker out for the first time this fall. Let us know what you're up to on this Utah game day. We'll get your predictions as the show goes along as well. It's 877-353-0700, or hit us up on Twitter, X, whatever it's called. This is Utes Game Day on ESPN 700. I am Porter Larsen. Here in a couple hours, we'll hand it over to Bill Riley, Scott Mitchell, Stevenson Sylvester for Utah and UCLA, right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. That's the head ball coach, Kyle Whittingham, bringing us back into the Utes Game Day pregame show. You can hear head coach Kyle Whittingham each and every Monday live on the ESPN 700 stream or on his press conference. It's every Monday at 11. And then, of course, the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show every Tuesday about 6 o'clock. We'll replay that throughout the week as well. Join Kyle and co talking football multiple times a week. For a guy who, I talked about this a little bit, a guy who, if he had his druthers, he probably wouldn't do a whole lot of interviews, a whole lot of media stuff. He really is pretty generous with his time and gives you guys an hour plus of content every week. So go and listen. Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show, Kyle Whittingham Press Conference, and then multiple interviews throughout the week. The sound is up and available at ESPN 700sports.com. All right. Injury reports, availability reports, some news for you that you probably already know. They're going to look a little different this year. A lot of what the injury report has looked like historically for Utah football is, well, nothing. Kyle is notorious for saying, well, we don't talk about injuries unless I want to talk about injuries, right? Unless it's part of the narrative, unless it's part of, hey, maybe an advantage for us. Kyle will only talk about the injuries if he wants to talk about the injuries. That's fine. That's his prerogative. But we do know the Cam Rising situation last year, just the sheer amount of injuries over the last couple of years. It's going to be a storyline for Utah football this year. I have some good news. They're pretty healthy going into week one. Now, there are a couple absences that we'll get to you before kickoff, but none of them are like long-term or at least not major contributors that are going to be long-term absences. So week one, deep sigh of relief. The Utes are pretty healthy. They're going into this game with what you'd expect to be pretty much a full roster against UCLA. We'll still get you, this guy's getting this many snaps. This guy's maybe a little limited. That's going to be part of it as well. But you don't get any player injury or availability reports until conference play. So this is by conference. The Big 12 has adopted a policy. The other power conferences have adopted policies, but this isn't because of fans and media members belly aching or wanting to know who's playing. I'm telling you, this is for the Sharks. This is for the guys in Las Vegas. This is because people lost money last year on a lot of conflicting reports. This is a response, and this is, I think, a continuation of, well, where the bread is buttered in college football. Right now, it's on the TV side, it's on the entertainment side, it's on the gambling side. Of course, for the players, it's on the NIL side, and they're getting their share as well. But you're going to see Big 12 availability reports this year. You're going to see them from a lot of the power conferences. Here's the policy. Starting in 2025, and this is from Big12.com, starting with the 2025-2026 academic year, the Big 12 Conference will require its institutions to publicly disclose through a standardized availability report any uncertainties regarding a student-athlete's participation in football or men's and women's basketball games between Big 12 schools. Why are they just doing it for those three sports? Well, those are the three sports that people gamble on. This policy is intended to promote fairness and integrity in competition and protect student-athlete welfare through uniform, transparent reporting policies. I will say one of the positives about that is that you'll maybe see less people blaming the players who were just out with injury. I see way too much of that, by the way, on the internet, tagging players and the like, right? People who use their own volition to go and gamble on sports, and then because they lose, they get mad at an 18-year-old who is at their favorite college, right? Way too much of that online. Hopefully this moves a little bit away from that. They can at least look at the conference now. They can at least look at the coaches and the people who were reporting. But that is what the availability report will require. Now, here's the deal. They're going to leave some gray area. There's going to be available, probable, questionable, and out. The Big 12 has instructed coaches to use those terms based on their chance to play, whether it's a 0% chance to play, that means you're out. A 25% chance to play, that means you're doubtful. 50% chance to play, it means you're questionable. 75% chance to play, which means you're probable. And 100% chance to play, I don't know if that's even possible. You could roll an ankle walking out of the tunnel. Available. Here is where I think this will be funny. Kyle Whittingham has always said, hey, if they do an availability report, make it uniform across the country, I'm all in. I'll do it. How many of you know Kyle Whittingham? And how many of you know Kyle Whittingham? Because I think he's a man of integrity. I think he's a good guy. But when it comes to winning football games, he does not give a lick. What you think, what the Big 12 thinks, what anyone thinks about how he's going to pull those strings. I'm going to give you an example. And it's one that involves the UCLA Bruins. Kickoff a couple years ago. Utah won 14-7. Cam Rising was all off season, kind of expected to play, maybe questionable, but we didn't know. It was all gray area because there's no reporting. There's no injury reports. Leading into that game against UCLA, I can tell you because I was present for a lot of it. Cam Rising was not going to play that football game. He had not been cleared. There was no preparation pregame during the week. He had not gone through walkthroughs with the first team. He was not going to play against UCLA. I can tell you that. He would have been out. Not doubtful or questionable. He would have been out. But he trotted out in uniform and started warming up. Not only did he start warming up, he took some reps with the first team. That was pure gamesmanship by Kyle Whittingham. Kyle threw Cam Rising in a uniform and told him to go throw a few balls because he knew it would change the way UCLA was prepping for the game, and it did. I was standing on the sideline, and I watched UCLA look at Cam Rising taking snaps pregame, and I'll tell you, he was throwing the ball pretty good, actually. He looked okay in that UCLA pregame. He was zipping it around. He was jumping around, having a good time. And I watched the defensive staff at UCLA have a meeting and then go change what they were doing pregame. You only have a few, little room for adjustment in that time period. You only have a few minutes there to change what you want to do against a team or to throw something else into the mix. And what Utah did last year against UCLA was a complete smoke show. Cam Rising was not going to play. He was not going to take a snap, yet they threw him out there in warm-ups knowing, because of all the buzz around the offseason, because of all the buzz around his availability, that UCLA would react to it, and they did. Now, the final score is 14-7. Utah's offense didn't capitalize on that or anything. But, man, did Utah need to pull all the strings possible to win that game and to get out of there with a W. And they did, including throwing Cam Rising out there as a complete decoy. Cam put his uniform on, laced up his cleats, even put his shoulder brace on with the knowledge that that was not going to be a game that he played in. And it was part of the game. He actually did contribute in that manner. Count it. Count it as a snap. It had an effect on that game. It had an effect on the pregame, and that's the kind of thing that I want you to keep in the back of your mind, because when you start to see player availability reports, there may be a lot of names on there because Kyle Whittingham's not going to not use the gray area that the Big 12 has provided, right? With these percentages, with available, probable, questionable, doubtful, I can promise you that Kyle is going to use that in some way, not in a way that's, doesn't show integrity. He's not just going to lie about it. He's going to go about it in a way where if he doesn't have to give you information, and not you, but give the other coaching staff information, he's not going to. Or he's going to muddy it up a little bit. And it's not to be a bad guy. It's not to mess with the broadcasters at Fox Sports. Petros, that's our guy, but come on, dude. He's not doing it to make the people in Vegas mad. He's not doing it to make the people sitting at home waiting to see their favorite quarterback mad. He's doing it because he wants to win, and he doesn't care if he wins by 1 point because of some gamesmanship that he pulled pregame. And he doesn't care if it doesn't have an effect at all. If it might, he's going to use those resources to his advantage, at least as much as he can. I'm really interested to see how Kyle approaches the player availability reports in the Big 12 Conference. Not because I think he's going to get cute with it, just because I think he's going to use the gray area. He's going to use those availability reports, I want to say a little differently than some coaches might, because he views it as a genuine upper hand if you can cause some lack of clarity in the game plan. So your roster and injury report this week is not much of an injury report. I regret to inform you that in week 1, there's not much there. We'll update you on who is not in uniform when we actually get there, when we get to seeing some guys out on the field and seeing some warm-ups. Your player availability report all season long, though, will be official, and we're going to get it throughout the week, and we're going to get it through the Big 12 Conference, and it will be brought to you all year long by CenXL and JBR Clinical Research, conducting clinical research studies to fuel growth and advancement in the medical field, with studies currently on acne, tummy tucks, neuropathy, chronic pain in the low back, osteoarthritis, and knee pain. Call 801-261-2000. That's 801-261-2000 or CenXLResearch.com to find more info. If any of those things are bothering you, or you have chronic low back pain, you might be able to get some of it taken care of and maybe get paid for it. CenXL, JBR Clinical Research, and CenXLResearch.com. Back on the other side, next segment of the Utes Game Day pregame show features one Trevor Riley. Of course, Trevor working on his own project at the moment. That takes him to California this week, so he's joining us live from out on the coast. But we'll talk some Utes, maybe a little NFL and big picture college football as well with the former Utes and Super Bowl champion with the New England Patriots. He is Trevor Riley. I am Porter Larsen. James Peterson behind the glass. Scott Mitchell, Stevenson, Sylvester, Bill Riley, all still to come on a game day on Utah's #1 sports talk in your home of Utah football. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. QB1, Devin Dampier, the New Mexico transfer, coming with OC Jason Beck, bringing us back in on the Utes Game Day pregame show. Here, dishing with Dev every Thursday on the Sean O'Connell Show. Thursday at noon. You'll hear it usually replayed about 6 o'clock that day as well. Of course, to be determined with a lot of Thursday night football going on throughout the season as well. So, dishing with Devin every Thursday on ESPN 700. Hey, if you miss it live, it's ESPN700sports.com. We make it easy for you there. Of course, you can join us on YouTube Live as well, where we are right now, joined by Trevor Riley. And correct me if I'm wrong, Trev, you're still out on the coast, not too far from our Utes.
Yeah, we had a game last night, Utah Islanders. We beat Laverne College, and we stayed down at my uncle's house, Uncle Bill. And now we're headed to the game. We got me and you remember Darrell Mack, former Ute running back legend.
Darrell came in studio with me last year. He's gonna do it again now.
Yeah, well, you know what? He's in the back seat, and his linebackers had a heck of a game. But we're headed up to Chad Manis's Utah Players Association. We got a tailgate in L.A. at the Rose Bowl, so we're pretty excited. I think I see a 2-score victory on the horizon.
All right,
That's what I'm hoping for.
We'll get there. But you're a world traveler. I feel like I've talked to you on the phone, Trevor Riley, from the beaches of Hawaii, from Saudi Arabia, from probably random other places around as well. Give some fans who may be listening in Los Angeles the lowdown for LA. What's a little secret spot?
Okay, so the first thing is everybody's going to tell you, chicken and waffles. They like Roscoe's. That's the Disneyland of Los Angeles restaurants, I would say.
Of course.
Anywhere you go in Koreatown, though, downtown LA, Koreatown, that's the new spot, right? You can pick and choose wherever you want there. That's a cool place to go. Pasadena, where the game's at, that's more of a family place, right? Place to live. And then if you're in LA and you're at USC, just go north. Do not go south of campus. That's all I'll tell you about that.
Just stay north. Stay north, and we'll hit Koreatown. Lupe's for some tacos. I'll throw that in there. We always appreciate and enjoy our trips to LA, especially now, Trev. There are no Pac-12. These might be few and far between, at least for now, for the University of Utah. What's your perspective on that? Now that this is more of a reunion than it is any sort of conference game.
Well, I was watching that Ohio State-Texas game this morning.
Yeah.
And they have that ad for the Big Ten where they show every single city on the map, right? So they start out in L.A. and they end in New Jersey, okay? So I can only stop and think, well, Utah and BYU will probably be in that in the next 2 years, however that shakes out. With that being said, you're right about that. We don't have any, the Big Ten is different now. They own L.A. Isn't that interesting? But I see that on the horizon for the Utes. I don't see that as not really that's probably going to happen.
And we've talked about this a lot, and since you're a guy who's played in the NFL, I'll ask you about it. It does seem, Trevor, that if the powers that be in college football have their way, we will be working towards some sort of pro model with whether it's the SEC, Big Ten, or some other whatever we call it at the top. Probably maybe two or three leagues that are governing this thing, separate from the NCAA, and it'll look like the NFL as far as the TV product goes. What are some pros to that, and maybe some cons to that, if you're observing from the seat of having been a player in both?
Well, I would say the biggest issue is you're not going to have those rivalry games, and that's because in the old Pac-10, the old Pac-12, you played. Well, the old Pac-10, you pretty much played everybody. That was what made them different.
Right.
So now with that, it's going to be a round robin, kind of like the NFL. The NFL has an interesting scheduling model. They round robin it every year, AFC, NFC, and then they also try to match you with games based off of what your schedule was the year before. They'll have to figure something out like that. There's so many teams now, right, in Big Ten and SEC. Once they finish that, they'll dissolve the ACC and the Big 12, I think. But I think that's what's going to happen, is you'll miss that. On the other side, you're going to get to games where Utah's going to play Rutgers. That's interesting, kind of, I guess. Instead of going to L.A. or Colorado, we're going to New York. But the biggest thing we're going to have is some continuity, right? Because of the NFL model, there's no reason why we shouldn't be in the same boat. And some would say that AAA baseball and all that's nice. I don't think so. I think the model of two leagues, right, and you have a Super Bowl at the end, or some kind of playoff system, it's pretty awesome. So I think that's probably where it's going to be.
It'll be interesting, Trev, either way. Let's zero into this weekend, Utah and UCLA. The Utes, obviously a new-look team. They've got a new quarterback. They got a new offensive coordinator. But that's a far cry from the new faces that UCLA has. We know a lot more about Utah than we do about the Bruins. Does that give you some confidence that Utah seems to be at least a little bit further along in what is a little bit of a reset?
Well, here's my only scare about UCLA. I remember going to a game. Carl Durrell's the head coach. USC's undefeated. I'm in the Rose Bowl. UCLA beats this team, okay? And to your point, we knew some of the players, but it was a lot of just hard-nosed, tough guys or guys from LA. Anytime you have a team in Southern California, your roster, there's so many kids that you don't find out here that end up getting somewhere. I mean, even myself and Durrell, in a way, we were both guys that probably should have been at a bigger school. We ended up at Utah because of Southern California. And so when you're local like UCLA is, they're going to have some guys now, all right? And not everybody's kind of found out based off of what you see. But I'm talking about freshmen. They got the quarterback from Tennessee. He's obviously a big deal. But I'm always very wary of teams from LA because their backups are pretty good. All right, they got some guys.
Yeah, no, I think it's you're never questioning the talent on those rosters. It's more about how much of a unit they can be and how well put together they are for week one. Nico Iamaleava, of course, is a highly touted quarterback out of Tennessee. He was one of the best deep ball throwers in the country last year, so you really do have to watch out for the big play and him to kind of break things open. Defensively, Trevor, when you have such a focal point at quarterback like that, a guy that, and Kyle Whittingham said this at his press conference, he's not Cam Newton, but he's built like that, right? He can really, if he gets out in the open field, he can really do some damage, and he can throw it 80 yards. So that's a guy who is a pretty unique scout and a pretty unique preparation for a defense to have. What changes when you're facing off with a quarterback like that?
I went back and looked at who he's beaten. I think he beat in his freshman year Alabama and Oklahoma.
Yep.
Now, they're not what they used to be in some ways, but this is a team that went to the playoff last year, for heaven's sake.
Right.
That's our dream. The starting quarterback decides to transfer, and now we're facing him week one. The biggest improvement in a player is usually between year 1 and 2. It really is, even in the program. If you redshirt your first year, your freshman, and that's where the improvement usually happens. Big jump. So if it scales, right? Okay, that's kind of a nightmare for everybody else if he scales, because he was decent last year statistically, but he won. They won a lot of games, man. They were in the playoff. So I just kind of want to sit back and wait and see what happens here with all this, because it's an interesting dynamic. We've never really seen that before. A guy leaves after his freshman year after going to the playoffs. So I'm interested to see how he is. He's going to face the toughest defensive coordinator in the country. It'd be a good matchup.
And that I'll use your answer there as a segue. What challenges it pose for UCLA, a first game with this quarterback, with this offensive coordinator together, and they have to go up against a Morgan Scalley coach defense that, Trevor, we've talked about this a lot. Morgan Scalley is going to wait until you walk up to the line of scrimmage. Now, there are helmet communications in college football now, and that has kind of thrown a wrench in what Morgan Scalley has historically done on the field, or at least it's made him speed up what he's historically done on the field. But give listeners a little bit of insight on how difficult it might be for a first-time quarterback OC communication going up against this defense and this defensive coordinator specifically.
Well, the first thing is whatever you see pre-snap, it's probably not what it's going to be post-snap until it is. That's the chess game, right? Morgan will show you something, you'll stay in it. Then he'll show us something, he's rolling to this, then he's rolling to that. And so that can get confusing, right, if you're not in your chess game, I call it. On the second end of that, I would say the biggest issue they're going to face is that defensive line. They might be able to play a 4-down rush and get to that quarterback, and I'm serious about that. They got some dudes. They may not have to blitz. And if that's an issue, now this guy's facing too high on first and second down, and he's facing a 4-man rush that is in his lap. So there's a lot to unpack there, but I would say the biggest thing I would say, watch out for the coverage pre-snap. That's what you're going to see. If you're watching on TV, watch the safeties. Watch the corners. Watch the linebackers, those back 7 guys. He moves them around like chess pieces before and during the snap.
we see a lot of, and this is a trend all throughout college football. I've seen so much 3-high safety looks this couple, first couple of weeks, but also the last couple of years in college football. Do you think if Utah, Trevor, can get that 4-man rush that you talked about, we'll see a lot of those 3-high looks?
Well, we could if they're facing running teams. That's the biggest thing with the way this game's going. I'm watching Ohio State run an offense I played against in New England.
Yep.
I'm watching that this morning. Pro ball is different, guys. I'm used to the spread game when I was in college. Rich Rod and his whole thing was taken over, right? And so it's kind of morphed back into a 21, 12 personnel, and that's when you face you play cover 3 or man against that because you got better bring that safety down. They're going to run the football. And so as we see this game progress, right, I'm interested to see what's the attack for UCLA in the first 15 plays. Are they balanced? Are they trying to spread it out? Are they in big personnel and running the football? I think that'll dictate whether or not we're in single high or not in first and second down especially. But our base defense, everybody knows this, is nickel man. I mean, we've been running that since Fred did Mad Dog Whittingham back in the 80s. So that's been the staple. Obviously, Morgan's put his flip on it. But if we don't see those big personnels, right, we're probably going to match personnel and play nickel, and I could see us playing cover 2. Dude, that defensive line, I'm telling you, they're going to be a problem, man. They got some big old guys on there.
Yeah, and for Utah, I think it's on the flip side. That's also UCLA's strength is that defensive line. They're hoping to get a 4-man rush as well. How do you think that lines up against Utah, which may be one of the best offensive lines in the country, at least if we trust the offseason prognosticators? It's kind of strength on strength with UCLA's D-line and Utah's O-line, no?
I would agree. The big question mark, I think, for all fans, what's going to happen in the Utah running back room?
Yep.
I was talking to Darrell today about some former stuff, and I said, Utah's really never not had good running backs. Now, it's been a long time since we haven't had a great running back. And we're kind of waiting to see. Last year, they were okay, right, at times. I don't want to speak too much on it. I just know that we're used to having greatness back there. Do we have that? That's the question mark for me as far as the running game goes and pass protection, whatever in general. We just got to stay healthy, man. There's rumblings about some injuries up front. I haven't heard much. I think we're going to start who we think is going to start. I just want to make sure we stay healthy. But again, who's going to be that tailback? When we had backs, they could always make the first guy miss.
Right.
We talked about that single high defense, right? That extra safety he's unaccounted for. It's one-on-one with the back. And so when you start talking about all that stuff, right, can you make that guy miss? And that's the issue we're going to see. We're going to see that.
And yeah, you talk about Utah in the running back position, whether it's Darrell Mack or Devontae Booker or Matt Asiata or Zach Moss. There's always that lead back, a guy you can, if you want to give him the ball 30 times a game, you could. But even when Utah doesn't seem to have that, it seems that as the season goes along, someone surfaces, a Tavion Thomas, a Mekhi Bernard, right? And I think we're just wondering how that plays out this year. Wayshawn Parker, a lot of production at Washington State, and Akira Rogers, a guy that had a lot of production in New Mexico as well. So by committee at the start, Trev, but I think you'll see Utah and Kyle try to look for that bell cow back as well, and I think Wayshawn's probably the lead candidate as of now. All right, Trevor Riley, we'll set you loose. Enjoy the game. Don't have too much fun at that NFLPA tailgate, but have a little fun at least.
That's Utah Players Association. So
there you go.
Flipped it up. That's our own Players Association. We just started it. And we won't, but we'll take some good pictures. We'll send them your guys' way. How's that? We got a bunch of ex-players showing up.
And when you're back here in Salt Lake, we'll be there with you.
Sounds good, guys. Have a great game. All right, go Utes.
Thanks, Trev. Trevor Riley, former Ute, of course, former NFL linebacker, a Super Bowl champion. He brought his ring in to show us the other day. Always good to get your hands on one of those. He's going to be joining us throughout the year, at least in parts through the pregame show. He mentioned his Utah Islanders. That is a Salt Lake Community College affiliated program that just got a win against Laverne. They lost to Snow College in week 1 and then beat Laverne College out in California this week. So kudos to Trevor and those guys getting the thing rolling out there. All support to them and that endeavor. It's cool. It's a different reality in college football, right? It's not the big glamorous NIL space that you see with the top flight college football. That's a lot of kids that need an opportunity and are getting it thanks to Trevor and the Salt Lake Community College affiliated Utah Islanders. So we'll keep track of them as they go. Their season will end about a quarter way through this season, and after that, Trevor's probably going to hop on the pregame show a little bit more officially. Appreciate him for stopping by. Brought to you by Red Bull. Seems like a appropriate sponsor for Trevor Riley. I don't know if he's a Red Bull guy, but he just seems like perpetually caffeinated. Big thanks to Red Bull. Red Bull gives you wings. Sponsoring the Trevor Riley interview. On the other side, a college football, a Big 12 scoreboard. We're going to take you through each of the Big 12 teams that have played so far and each of Utah's future opponents that have played so far. We'll give you an update on the scores and performances from those schools and go around the top 25 and the rest of the country on Utah's #1 sports talk. I am Porter Larsen, James Peterson behind the glass. We'll send it over to Bill Riley, Scott Mitchell, Stevenson, Sylvester for the call of the game in just over an hour from right now. It is your home of the Utes, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. The All-American Spencer Fano. University of Utah taking on UCLA 3 hours from right now. They'll be taking the field for kickoff in Pasadena at the historic Rose Bowl. You'd rather maybe finish your season in Pasadena than start it there, but hey, they'll take any trip to LA, at least for some football. and call it a weekend. Utah and UCLA kicking off at 9 p.m. Mountain Time. Bill Riley, Scott Mitchell, Stevenson Sylvester, they'll have the call of the game right here on your home of the Utes, ESPN 700. That will be your radio team throughout the 2025 and 2026 college football season. How about a little college football scoreboard update for you? Brought to you by our friends at Beer Bar, 161 East 2nd South. It is Beer Bar downtown. I'll be live from Beer Bar for one of our pregame shows. That'll be the Cal Poly game. About noon, I'll be going live from Beer Bar. So it'll be a little Beer Bar brunch with myself. And if you guys want to come by and have some drinks, maybe have some Bloody Marys, and talk some football, that will be on September 6th at Beer Bar. All right, college football scoreboard update brought to you by our friends at Beer Bar. How about Central Michigan, a win over San Jose State? We're going to go through a lot of the games that have gone final already, including UNLV. How about Dan Mullen, 2-0 at previously lowly UNLV. FIU with a 42-9 win over Bethune-Cookman. Georgia Tech, a 27-20 win over Big 12 Colorado. Of course, keeping an eye on all of our Big 12 opponents. Continuing that theme with Auburn winning over Baylor, 38-24. Baylor was one of the preseason favorites to contend for the Big 12. And, hey, they still could. A win or a loss against Auburn doesn't prevent you from doing so. But Sawyer Robertson didn't really get into the kind of groove that they thought he might. And Baylor is now 0-1. Kansas, they're 2-0, 46-7 win over Wagner in that one. So Kansas off and rolling. App State gets the 34-11 win over Charlotte. Wake Forest wins over Kennesaw State. Michigan State over Western Michigan. And how about this one? Tarleton State, a double overtime win over Army. Illinois gets the 52-3 win over Western Illinois. Illinois, number 12 team in the country. They were the first-ranked team to be in action over the course of the weekend. San Diego State gets the 42-0 win over Stony Brook. Wisconsin gets to 1-0 with a 17-0 win over Miami. And some more Big 12 action. Nebraska got the win over Cincy, 20-17 in a close one there. UAB over Alabama State, 52-42. Houston, 27-0 over Stephen F. Austin. And Oklahoma State, Big 12 opponent there, 27-7. They get the season started against UT Martin. A Utah opponent in the very near future, Wyoming, a 10-0 win over Akron in their opener. South Florida over Boise State. That one was kind of surprising as you watched Boise State make a title run last year. You kind of always felt like they were really leaning on Ash and Genty. Well, they lost 34-7 to South Florida in their opener, and man, they did not look good. The tackling, just everything about Boise State's performance looked even worse than you'd expect in Week 1. So we'll continue to follow them as we go. Hawaii gets the 23-20 win over Stanford. I mentioned UNLV; they're 2-0. Dan Mullen and co. there, 2-0. Really impressive start for them. How about this one, James? 31-17, Florida State gets the win over Alabama. The number 8 team in the country goes down. Of course, Alabama, recipients of a certain cornerback from the University of Utah. I didn't see him on the field. One Cam Calhoun outside of a few special teams plays, and Florida State gets the 31-17 win over Alabama, the first top 10 team in the country to go down. Arkansas gets a 52-7 win over Alabama A&M. Ohio State and Texas, the first top 10 matchup of the season, goes the way of the Buckeyes. Arch Manning, underwhelming in his debut, but I'll add some context there. Underwhelming not because of the hype surrounding his play, but just kind of his name and I think what was a lot of irresponsible offseason hype. Listen, the kid's in commercials. He's a good quarterback. He's got a good arm. But I saw like professional analysts talking about him as a generational, no doubt talent. That where have you seen that? What are you talking about? We saw him on the field for like a couple of drives last year. He was fine against UL Monroe. And listen, I still think Arch Manning can be good, but what happened today and the reaction to it was less about what Arch Manning did and more about what I think was kind of just an irresponsible way of covering what is a kind of a family royalty name, right, in the college football and the quarterback world specifically. Arch Manning has not shown that he is Eli. Certainly hasn't shown that he is Peyton, but he's being covered that way. And I don't really think it's fair to the kid. I think he still probably is going to end up being a really good quarterback. But, I think the coverage around him has been a little bit unfair. Penn State 46-11 over Nevada. Georgia 45-7 over Marshall. Oregon, number 7, they get off and rolling with a 59-13 win over Montana State. They looked really good in their opener. 27-14 Indiana over Old Dominion. Iowa State gets the 55-7 win over South Dakota. Iowa State is 2-0, and of course one of those is a Big 12 win. That kind of rounds out your top 25 scoreboard. And like I said, we'll give a little extra focus to teams that Utah still has on the schedule as we go along. The college football scoreboard update brought to you each and every week by our friends at Beer Bar. As I mentioned, 161 East, 2nd South, right here in downtown Salt Lake, a partnership with Bar X. Of course, our friends Nick Ramondo, Ty Burrell, and co. have the operations going down there at Beer Bar. 100 beers, 30 of them on tap, and a good atmosphere as well if you're trying to watch some sports. Join me September 6th around noon. I'll be there for the Utes Game Day pregame show from Beer Bar. Back on the other side, Zach Moss, the former Utah running back, the current NFL free agent, one of the best to ever lace him up at Rice-Eccles Stadium, the leading rusher in Utah football history. Looking forward to chatting with our friend Zach Moss as always. That comes your way on the other side. Kenneth Gooby Scott still to come, and, well, we'll set the stage and give you our predictions for the game as we set you loose to Bill, Scott, and Sly in Pasadena. I am Porter Larsen, and this is Utes Game Day on your home of Utah football. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, and proud to be part of Utah's ESPN radio network. That was former University of Utah running back Zach Moss, of course, atop the record books here in Salt Lake City, currently an NFL free agent, spent the last 4 years with the Indianapolis Colts, Buffalo Bills, and most recently the Cincinnati Bengals. Zach is doing a little rehab on what was a neck injury that is not super serious, but at the time it was undiscovered and he was playing with it. So it was pretty damn serious at a time last year. They have kind of got it figured out, and now he's preparing and trying to get back at it probably for maybe midseason or next year in the NFL. If not, well, he can do whatever he really wants at this point. Zach Moss, brought to you by our friends at Mo Betta's. Born of native Hawaiian roots on the island of Oahu, where a strong culture of aloha is rooted in family traditions. When they started Mo Betta's in 2008, they wanted to bring that special experience to everyone who entered their restaurant. A big thanks to our friends Kimo and Kalani Mack at Mo Betta's, a Hawaiian staple right here in Utah. Locations and menu at mobettas.com. You can also order online at mobettas.com. They've got a little rewards program, so if you're there often, make sure you enroll in that, and you can get some free food every once in a while. It's Mo Betta's bringing you the Zach Moss interview on today's pregame show. We're going to take a break from one former Ute to another. It's Kenneth Scott. Batman joins the show on the other side. I am Porter Larsen. James Peterson behind the glass. This is Utes Game Day. Utah and UCLA come your way just a couple hours right here on Utah's #1 sports talk. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. That's the head ball coach, Kyle Whittingham, bringing us back in on the Utes Game Day pregame show. Of course, you can hear an hour plus of content from the head ball coach right here on your home of the Utes each and every game week. First off, on Mondays, first thing you hear, Kyle Whittingham press conference. I'll be live up on the hill for that each and every Monday, and you can hear it here on the station. And then, of course, every Tuesday at 6, right after the drive, it is the Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show. So tune in for that or visit ESPN700sports.com later in the week to get your fill before kickoff. Utah and UCLA, the matchup tonight, 9 p.m. Mountain Time, the kickoff, and that's pretty late for our next guest. He is one Kenneth Scott. We're approaching your bedtime already, Gooby.
Right? Like, man, I'm like, can we get an earlier time or is this going to be the norm?
Well, listen, it's, maybe a little ode to Pac-12 after dark. A 8 p.m. kickoff on the West Coast means we got to stay up late if we're any further east. The folks out on the East Coast, man, they got to be up at 11 o'clock if they want to watch this game. You're going to be up an hour later than the folks out here in Utah. But hey, it's college football. We'll take it when we can get it. And on week one, man, I watched college football from the moment I woke up this morning, and we're still doing it now. Is that kind of how your Saturdays are going at the moment?
Oh, yeah. I've been up and at it ever since the Texas versus Ohio State game, and I've been on it every game since. And so I'm excited to hopefully end the night real well with a Utes W. So we'll see how it goes.
You still get the itch. You still, I've seen you recently. You're still athletic. You could still maybe get out there. I wonder how much you still have the feel of wanting to play, or if you get that competitive juice out elsewhere.
Oh my gosh, I definitely get the itch, man. I remember I was talking with Britton Covey not too long ago, and he was like, dude, you could definitely still play, but it's just as far as how long you're going to be able to play, because the recovery that's going to be the toughest. He was like, you play a series, but you'll be winded. But as far as getting the itch to just be out there, man, I watching these games, whether it's high school, college, I'm like, man, it makes me want to be out there on the sidelines coaching or something. And so definitely have the itch. That's for sure.
Yeah, man. What do you do to get the competitive juices now? I'm playing pickup hoops. What I'm in here in Salt Lake, and with Sly and with Matt Asiata and with a bunch of these former guys, we get some hoops going. Is that something you're into, or how do you get the jitters out if you're trying to get those? I feel like on game day you always have the butterflies whether you're playing or not.
Yeah, like my wife, she's always laughing at me because I'm out here like screaming like, let's go, and like pounding my chest like, and she's like, dude, chill, dude. And so for me, I just be running around hyped up as if I'm in a tunnel or something. My kids looking at me like, Dad, what's your problem? Like, it's game day. And so typically I'll try to, play some golf or go outside and do some yard work. I can be able to smell some grass. But other than that, those are like my main forms.
All right, Goob, even though you're a guy who, you stay somewhat connected, you stay in the loop as we all do during the off season. But even if you do stay in the loop, there's still so many question marks. Today's college football, the rosters, they turn over so quickly. Coaching staffs turn over so quickly. How much did you stay engaged during the offseason, and what are your expectations going into kickoff for your Utes?
Man, I tried to stay engaged as much as possible from what an online perspective can let me. But I definitely try to stay engaged. And, I'm super excited. I just can't wait to see the newness of everything and how it's going to unfold. Seeing, like, different philosophies. Is the new OC going to be able to do, and open up the bag of tricks like he was able to have in New Mexico, or is it going to be more restricted? Like, I just want to see those nuances of it. I know defensive-wise we're going to be good, but offense, I kind of want to see what that looks like.
Let's zero in on that, because I wanted to ask you, how much do you think, and this is a complicated question because Jason Beck's offense is Utah's offense now, how much do you think this is going to look like a Jason Beck offense? And how much do you think it's going to look like a Utah offense? Because there's always this conversation about how much Kyle gives the reins to the OC, right? This is a conversation that goes back literally 20 years. And, I think that Andy Ludwig maybe had a little more freedom than some OCs of the past. I wonder in Kyle's, extended coaching career, now that he's got a guy in Morgan Scalley coaching, waiting, I wonder if he's delegating more and maybe opening up that OC playbook a little bit.
Yeah, being that it's potentially, his final season, I think he's just going to open it up a little bit more. It's like, look, whatever it takes to win kind of mentality instead of playing it safe, more being more risk out there. Because, like if you look around it, like we're always known to try to like mitigate any type of turnover and not let us be in those type of situations. And I feel like in previous years, as soon as there's a sniff of a possible risk, it's like, nah, other than us going forward on fourth down, but anything outside like the passing game and stuff like that, it's like it's been on a kind of a chokehold and not free as, it could be. And so we just kind of reduce it down to the run. So I'm hoping, this year it can allow that because, nowadays you're going to need offense to score. And with that, it comes risk. And so I'm just hoping that, not no knock or anything, of how things are ran. It's just, I'm just hoping that it's able to be its full potential rather than operating at a 60 or 70%,
Well, and a lot of that's personnel, right? You can't open up the playbook when you don't have your quarterback, right?
Sure.
Like a lot of the Ludwig stuff probably never happens as far as him getting dismissed and all the midseason stuff if Cam Rising's just healthy, right?
Yeah.
And then you have your full playbook, and then your offense looks really good, and your offensive coordinator's probably not getting the hot seat. Now, that's, you turn the page, you rip off the Band-Aid, you assess what we have in front of us, and that is Jason Beck, Kyle Whittingham, and this Utah team. I do think there's a little bit more willingness to delegate from Kyle Whittingham, but that also has to do with the trust. The fact that he, and I, this is from conversations I've had with Kyle and Morgan, part of their willingness to maybe allow this offense to be more Jason Beck's is because they have tried to scout it and have had trouble, right? When Kyle and Morgan are having trouble scouting a defense or scouting an offense, that means there's a lot of good stuff going on, and I think that gives them some more willingness to say, hey, Jason, do your thing. If you're confusing us, we like what you're doing. Maybe we'll let you do a little bit more of that. I'm really, really interested to see what that looks like. You're going to see a lot of RPO. You're going to see a lot more of a spread offense versus the pro offense you've seen the last few years. But exactly what that balance is, I think that'll tell us a lot about the, as you talked about, the risk aversion from Utah here in 2025.
Yeah, and you brought up an excellent point, just the trust factor, because previous years we have had like fits with those type of quarterbacks and those type of offenses. They tend to give us a little bit of trouble. And so with him knowing that those type of offenses gives us trouble and that type of offense coming here, he's like, well, okay, well, maybe let me see what this can do a little bit, And so it may be to the point, that's why I'm so anxious to see the game tonight. Like, man, if he's able to go out there and do his thing and and if we're okay with maybe having a turnover or two, because it's a possibility, right? I think it's going to be a bigger reward on the other side. I think we're going to have 30 points, 35, put up 400 yards, whether that's 250 passing, 150 rushing, whatever, or 250 rushing, 150, how we do. But, I think it's going to allow for bigger plays, game shifters, et cetera. So it's going to be interesting.
The wide receiver position, one of the biggest question marks for Utah remaining this year. I think more of it is by committee. They think they have plenty of bodies in the room. They just don't know how those reps are going to be delineated. You got Tobias Merriweather, Larry Simmons, a couple of transfers. You got Creed Whittemore, kind of your slot guy, returners in Dadrian Zipperer, Luca Caldarella. Those are probably the ones you look at mainly. Then you add in a possibility of some guys on the defensive side playing some offense. What do you think of the weapons outside for Devin Dampier, and how easy is life when you are one of those outside weapons and you have a quarterback that can extend plays?
Man, it takes it back to the backyard football because I think this is going to be a good year for the receivers to be able to like really blossom and shine in regards to like attempts, type of coverage looks that they're going to get and things of that nature, because we all know that the eye's going to be on Dampier for sure, and then our running back's going to be doing good. We have a great offensive line, and then so on the outside, it's really going to be a lot of one-on-one matchups, probably single high coverage, and so. When the first play happens and it's covered and Dampier does this thing and starts rolling out, moving around, and we're able to move around like backyard football, it's going to be interesting to see them get open, make plays, and it's going to be those big plays. And so I'm excited for this group. I think they're going to – it may not have a 1,000-yard receiver, but I think there's going to be maybe 2 or 3 of them that have over 500. I think that's a really good balanced type of receiving group. And so that's what I'm looking for. I think it's going to be really good. Earlier when I saw that Otto was moved to tight end, I actually thought that was like a really great move. He may not be the starter right now as far as the tight end position because we don't know the depth chart fully. But I think that probably would be that's a great landing spot for him along with the other tight ends that we have too. So this is going to be a good little core, and I'm anxious to kind of see how things are going to be moved around, as far as the ball, and having obviously Nate Johnson in the fold doing what he does in whatever position he's going to play. So that's going to be interesting.
And you mentioned it there, the tight end room, kind of a question mark as well. Not in numbers. They've got guys there, Dallin Bentley, Otto Tia, Hunter Andrews, who might be more of a hybrid guy. J.J. Buchanan, who is, from all reports, one of the best athletes in that room. And then, hey, maybe Lander Barton as well. If you listen to Kyle Whittingham,
right.
The tight end room is going to be really interesting. But Freddie Whittingham told me preseason that you probably aren't going to see a lot of 13 personnel traditionally, right? But you will still see tight ends on the field. They just may not be tight into the formation. They may be outset like Dalton Kincaid was a lot of the time.
Yeah.
That leads me to believe that in this offense, with the RPO stuff, with the spread stuff, you're going to see a lot of multiple tight end sets, but they're not going to be bunched up into the formation.
Right, and that's what's so exciting too, because we can play around with a lot of things like with this group, and so that's what makes me. I'm curious to see how it's all going to unfold, and especially how he's going to call the offense and et cetera. Because I wasn't really paying attention too much about New Mexico, but I'm interested to see how he's going to be doing, everything within our scope. And so, and plus he's going to have a freaking stellar defense, right, than he's probably ever been used to. And so he's probably going to take more chances. He's like, man, I can actually, be more free because I know I'm going to have a defense that's going to have my back. So maybe I can open it up a little bit more, So it's going to be super interesting, just the dynamic of his offense coming into our defense and how it kind of balances each other out.
All right, Gooby. 2 hours until this team is about ready for kickoff. You got a score prediction for us? If not a score prediction, you got a Utes win. Is that how you're feeling?
Yeah, I do have a score prediction. I honestly feel because, man, it's either going to be 27-21 us, or it's going to be 33-24. It's in between that range. But
okay.
I know we're going to get the W. It's just I don't know why those two scores are getting to me, but I think it's going to be in one of those two places.
Well, we'll check back with you after the score goes final. Kenneth Scott, of course, as I mentioned, joining the pregame show, may do so a little bit as the season goes along. And hey, if you're in town for any games, as I mentioned earlier, you're more than welcome to stop by.
Man, sounds good. Always a pleasure, man. Appreciate you.
Kenneth Scott, Batman, one of the better wide receivers in Utah football history, breaking down Utah before kickoff of UCLA, talking some offseason football. Always appreciate Kenneth Scott and his time. Brought to you today by Utah Toyota dealers. Head over to toyota.com to find your local Toyota dealer. Toyota-thon and more still to come in the fall. It is Utah's Toyota dealers bringing you the Kenneth Scott interview. One more segment to go on the Utes Game Day pregame show. We're going to set the stage for Bill, Scott, and Sly in Pasadena. We'll give you our predictions to the game, one final scoreboard update, and we'll go from there. Porter Larsen hosting it. James Peterson behind the glass. This is Utes Game Day on Utah's #1 sports talk, and you're home of the Utes. It's ESPN 700, 92.1 FM. That's QB1. Devin Dampier bringing us back in on the Utes Game Day pregame show. He takes his first snap as a Ute in just over 2 hours from right now. A final scoreboard update for you as we head into the final segment of the Utes Game Day show. How about the Aggies? Utah State, they're up 13-7 over UTEP as the first half winds down, but UTEP is driving. In Big 12 action, Kansas State is down 21-17 to North Dakota at the half. They are not looking good early. The 17th ranked Wildcats are 0-1 and maybe 0-2 after tonight. BYU kicking off. It was a slow start for them, but they are now up 14-0 over Portland State and driving still early in the second quarter in that one. 9 p.m. Mountain Time is the kickoff for Utah and UCLA. Right now, Utah is 6.5-point favorites. That has moved in their direction as the week has gone along. 48.5, the over-under. James Peterson back behind the glass producing this thing. He is the engineer for your Utah football season behind the scenes. James, listen, I think we're confident going in. Utah seems like in similar spots as UCLA as far as a reset goes. Utah feels like they're a little further along. That gives me confidence to think that they win this one.
Yeah, I have them coming out on top tonight. I've struggled with the score. Part of me, sometimes I think, okay, this is Utah's going to win by a couple of scores, not necessarily big blowout, but they'll win by at least 10 points. But then in the back of my mind, it keeps maybe it's the way the Big 12 has underperformed a little bit here.
They have.
It's gotten me going, you know what, maybe this will be a little bit closer. Utah's not the Big 12. They're each individual teams. There's been a couple of teams that have done good. Texas Tech is doing well against their FCS opponent today. So I think I'm gonna stick with my first instinct. 31-21 Utah. They're going to get to that 31 points they didn't get to last year.
Yeah.
They're going to do it. It's going to give everyone all kinds of optimism about this offense.
And that would cover the spread. That would go over for Utah. I'm gonna stay under on the total, but I do think Utah wins. I think it's their defense that kind of holds UCLA in check today and keeps them in control. I go Utah 28, UCLA. Let's give them 17, and I'll take the Utes in this one. And listen, a few keys to the game, at least on my end. It's strength on strength. Utah's offensive line, although they may be without a starter, we'll give you that info in the next couple of hours. It's their strongest unit, and they're going up against a UCLA defense that's got a few returning starters. Their best player in number 58 there in the middle. I think he's their best player on their whole team, including their quarterback there at defensive tackle. I think it's strength on strength there for Utah. I take them 28-17. I'll key in on stopping the big play. Nico is one of the best in the country at the big plays, but if you can hold him in check, he's not going to hurt you consistently as much as you'd think. So stop the big play, win the line of scrimmage, and I think Utah gets out of here 28-17, my final score prediction. Now, we'll see. Rose Bowl in Pasadena, the kickoff 2 hours from right now. For the call of the game, it's Bill Riley, Scott Mitchell, and Stevenson Sylvester. This has been Utes Game Day, brought to you by Outlaw Distillery. I am Porter Larsen. Next week, we'll be back at it. But, of course, in the meantime, Kyle Whittingham Coaches Show, Kyle Whittingham Press Conference. We'll have a whole week of football coverage for you. This has been Utes Game Day. Porter Larsen, James Peterson behind the glass. It's Bill, Scott, and Sly for the call of the game. It's kickoff in Pasadena. Hey, how about some Pac-12 After Dark on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM?